Okay, hello, and welcome to this eSchool News webinar, Creating and Evaluating Responsible A Policies in Education. What are the best practices and expert insights? My name is Kevin Hogan. I am the Content Director for eSchool News, and I am happy you're joining us today for what I know will be a very insightful and important conversation. This webinar is brought to you by Merlin Mind. Merlin is an education technology company building simple, safe, and powerful AI solutions for the classroom. Their first solution is Merlin, the award-winning AI assistant for teachers. Merlin seamlessly integrates into classrooms and existing edtech tools to automate everyday workflows so teachers can focus on driving successful learning outcomes. Merlin Mind is backed by visionary investors led by Learn Capital and has brought together top AI talent from IBM Research, Google Brain, Amazon, and Meta, and paired them with experienced K-12 teachers, administrators, and edtech experts. The company is headquartered in New York City. Now, before we get into the conversation, I'd like to take a minute to go over some of the features of the platform that we're using for this webinar. The event is being recorded, so you don't have to worry about missing a thing. Within a few days, you'll receive an email message that contains a link to the recorded webinar, along with a PDF of the slides. Now, if you have a question or comment for us, there is a chat function that you can launch. Feel free to use this if you have any thoughts or insights you want to share with Latha or myself, or to contact someone from eSchool News if you're having a technical question. And I highly encourage you to please share those thoughts, as it really helps us make sure that we're taking you in the direction that you want to know. This conversation is for you. So with these housekeeping items out of the way, let's get started with our conversation and introductions. With us today is Latha Ramanan. Latha is Senior Vice President for AI Product Growth and Strategic AI Initiatives for Merlin. Previously, she served as head of product and computing for Alexa voice services at Amazon. And prior to that, she was senior product marketing manager for Android ecosystem planning at Intel, where she developed the mobile communication group's software ecosystem strategy. Latha earned an MBA from Duke University, an MS in computer science from Arizona State University, and a degree from the University of Madras. She lives in the San Francisco Bay Area. Latha, thanks so much for joining us today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. I'm super excited to be talking to you.
Yes, and as I mentioned before the recording, it's hard to have a conversation about EdTech these days without AI popping in within the first 5 minutes. It's certainly the topic du jour that's up there. Maybe we get started, from your position. Where do you see the current state of play when it comes to AI? I think we're kind of about 2 years into where the hype of a 30-year-old technology has really kind of taken on. We kind of went through a fear cycle, I know, where a lot of folks talked about how we won't need teachers anymore, that the technology is going to replace the teachers. Certainly not happening. Then it turned into a bit of a cycle of irrational exuberance, where it's the best thing since sliced bread. It's going to replace everything. And now maybe we're kind of coming into a cycle of reality of where it's good, boring, reliable, solid state tools that can help a district or a school. Give us your point of view.
I'm going to start with where we are with Merlin Mind and what we believe where the AI play is, right? I think we know that in a K-12 classroom, teachers are irreplaceable. They are the center of the classroom for guiding the discussion, for engaging the students, for helping students learn, not just academically, but also emotionally, socially. There's so much that goes on that teacher guides. And AI is a tool or is an assistant to help the teachers on whatever they do already really well. It helps them manage the classroom, orchestrate the classroom flows, etc. So we want to meet the teachers where they are and help AI as an assistant for the teacher to engage with the students better. I think the classroom, what we truly believe, there are 3 things that we believe in, right? One is the teacher's presence is so important for providing a greater student engagement, which in turn helps with better student outcomes. And that's where AI can come in and help as a tool and as an assistant. And that's what we believe at Merlin Mind. But I also want to paint the picture of where AI is in education, where it was, where it's going. So before November 2022, why that date? Okay, that's the date that ChatGPT was launched, right? And it's going to be 2 years since it was launched by OpenAI. But before that, it's not that AI was never in edtech. AI was in edtech. AI has been in edtech for 30 years, but it's probably was very it wasn't very on your face. For example, it was in adaptive personalized learning tools such as like either Dreambox or Duolingo if you have used it, or it was even in the grading and assessment, like GradeScope, which Turnitin has bought. These things had AI in them, but it wasn't just called, or it was the traditional AI like AI, ML, etc. Grammarly, which we all know, I think the edtech, all the teachers know about it, that used AI as well. So before the ChatGPT moment came, some of these tools had already used AI. But what happened with ChatGPT? As you said, there was a lot of hype. And then like there was a lot of wrappers that were, around the ChatGPT and stuff, for lesson planning preparation. So what is happening now? We are seeing two things. One, there are, of course, edtech focused chatbots that are coming in, which are these AI chatbots that are there in the market. We see a lot of AI lesson planning and prep tools too. And then we also see existing edtech tools in the market, such as like either PowerSchool, if you take, or other things. They are also integrating AI in a meaningful way. And to that extent, as you know, or maybe some of your audience doesn't know, Merlin Mind has been around even before this moment. We were an AI assistant for classroom because we used NLP and ASR, which is the speech technology. It's like Alexa for the classroom. And that used AI. And with the moment of generative AI coming into play, we also introduced a feature within our assistant that took advantage of this generative AI moment. And so just to tie it all together for you, where I see AI going is AI is a tool, AI is an assistant. When used effectively, there are ways to use it effectively. When used effectively, it can be a great assistant for the teachers as well as for the student. And I think one thing is super important is the classroom. In the classroom, the teacher and student engagement is precious.
Yeah. So one thing this conversation will not be is whether or not there should be AI, because it's here. It's implanted. It's already being in use.
Exactly.
The positives are there. The challenges and some of the pitfalls of its use have still yet to be worked out, but it's no longer a question of if, but of how, right? And then, but then that still leaves us with this really wide conversation. We have an hour. We'll keep it to that. But there are different aspects of AI in the schools and the districts too. And I know we want to focus on this conversation on policy, but that brings us down to another kind of aspect of how we can get further into the weeds here. The AI applications cover the gamut from instructional strategies, from student use, but even just as important is almost on the administrative side. And when you talk about faculty tools on the instructional side, where do you find Merlin landing in that, if not trying to cover that gamut?
I think today Merlin is in for the educator side, right? It is on the teacher's device. It is also integrated with the front of the classroom panel, like New Line panel. So Merlin is an assistant on the New Line panel. Merlin is also an assistant for the teacher's device, whether that's a Windows PC or a MacBook, right? So that's where Merlin is, and the teacher has a remote, and it gives them the freedom to roam around the classroom and untether from the front of the classroom. So what we have heard some of the teachers say to us is there is no back row anymore, because the teachers can go and stand in the back row and still control their device, which is in the front of the device. There is no more running back and forth between the teacher's desk and to the back of the row. And if a student has a question, they are right there with the student, helping them solve the question, because they still have our Merlin remote and ability to control their front of the classroom through the Merlin assistant.
Mm-hmm. So with that, you're talking to, which I love when we have these conversations, but enough of the theory, give us how it works in the day to day, right? So you're talking about educators in the classroom using these tools to their benefit. But with many different technologies, and I won't say how long I've been covering this space, but for at least 20 years, you introduce a new technology into a classroom or into a district, you can have some obstacles there. You can have some challenges, either from the wider community who are worried about it. You have true technology worries about data privacy and student privacy. How does this recent application of AI affect that classroom work that the teacher's doing, as well as in the wider sense of the school? And how can policies help alleviate some of those obstacles?
Absolutely. So I think what I recommend, what we recommend in any of the workshops that we have at schools or teachers is like, if you're evaluating an AI tool, I think the first and foremost important is like to understand who the audience of the tool is, what the usage is going to be. Is it covering the teacher, student? Is it in the classroom or away from the classroom for homework, on a student's device, etc. So I think that clarity is super important to have. The next one is like we also need to understand the purpose of the tool. Is the purpose right here for Merlin? It's an assistant to the teacher to help the teachers in the classroom management and classroom flow. So it's primarily focused on the teachers and indirectly focused on the students, because it gives more time for the teachers to engage with the student. If it's a student device, is it to help them with the homework, or is it for any other, or to help them with their learning? Is it personalized learning or to help them learn a skill? I think those purpose of the tool is super important for you to have. And then I think any administrator or teacher have to understand what are the data collected by the tool. Is it a teacher data that's being collected? Is it the student data that's being collected? And what is being done to the data? What are the privacy and security concerns that are being addressed by the tool? And how the company, the software vendor who is proposing that tool, how are they handling that data? And what are they going to do with the data that's being collected? Am I going in the right direction for what you're asking for?
Yeah, I think absolutely. Yeah, because it more and more, as AI gets more sophisticated and technologies get more sophisticated, the less we talk about the actual technology and the more we talk about student
What?
and faculty behavior, right? And the ethical framework that is kind of built around what these are. So maybe go a little deeper into that about how those frameworks need to be adjusted as a result of AI, or don't they?
Yeah, I think some of the things is I think it's paying attention to what the tool is telling you, what the vendor is telling you or not telling you. And you have to dig a little deeper. For example, what are the compliance? What legal compliances do the company follow? Like, are they talking about FERPA and COPPA? Are they talking about SOC 2? Right? And these are the things that we have seen to be super important in some of the DOEs, Department of Education of different states, and also some of the DPAs that we have got, data protection agreement from the school districts that we have been able to sign. And another thing that is pretty important is like, are the vendors going to just give the AI tool and expect you to implement as a magic? No. Are they with you, hand holding you? There is training, there is what are they doing for training and literacy? How are they making sure that both your teachers, your students, and the administrators are speaking the same language when it comes to AI? And then the main other thing is like, are they available for technical support and maintenance? Are they able to help your school with if there are any challenges, not just for that, but just in the vicinity, in the context, are they coming there? And how are they answering about the questions for any bias, fairness, and how transparent are they with respect to the data that is being collected, with respect to what that AI tool is doing with the data, etc. I think that's very critical to understand. And what are they doing with the feedback? That's also super important. If your school has feedback, both from the district level, administrative level, and the educator level about the tool, is it going into a vacuum? Do you feel like you're just throwing it over the fence and nothing happening to that feedback? Or are they really doing something with the feedback, and are they communicating what they are doing with that feedback? So these are super important things to understand about this tool and the policy part.
Because again, this seems to come back a little bit on district culture, and where the responsibilities that you just threw out, I assume, are for senior uh, executives in the technology department of school districts in terms of their relationships with vendors. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, you also have to have a communication back and forth with your faculty members, right? Maybe the ones who are enthused about these technologies and keep coming to you to ask permission for them, as well as some of those who may be more, say, resistant to the use of them.
Right, absolutely. So I think one of the things that that's why at Merlin Mind we have both a checklist for teachers, for educators, as well as for the administrators, because we believe both of them should be there to evaluate the tool. And for teachers, it's more about, okay, how easy is it for you to learn the tool? I mean, that's where at Merlin Mind we believe we meet the teachers where they are at. Whatever edtech tools they're already using, we try to integrate with them. Not to, I mean, we covered it all? No, we are slowly getting there. As we get feedback from the schools, we are actually increasing the number of tools we have integrated with. So, and I think that's very important. What kind of training is available for me as an educator? What kind of what do I learn? What do I get from this? And what, if I have any issue, who do I go to? How easy is it for me to solve about? What are you doing with my data? Right? Because that's something we have seen educators are very particular about. What are you doing with my data? And if I want to get the data deleted, is it easy for me to do that? How easy, how is that company handling my data, right? I think that's very important. And more than that, it's also about, okay, I have to learn a new feature. How are you helping me? And what impact does this tool have on the classroom or the student outcome? I think evidence on efficacy studies, evidence, logic models, all of these are going to be important for educators to pay attention to as well, to say, okay, how do I use this tool to help increase the student outcome? Mm. Right.
So what sort of metrics can be used to evaluate that effectiveness?
I mean, it depends on what AI tool is being used. If it's a teacher tool, I think one of the things that could be that we have heard is like, hey, I feel, and one thing that we look for is like, if I take away Merlin from your classroom, do you feel that, oh, I'm missing a big part of what I used to teach with? I mean, that's a great way to say, hey, this tool has helped me a lot on a day-to-day basis, right?
Yeah.
That's from a teacher perspective. The other thing is how much time do you save with this, right? Like, because as simple as a command, like I set a timer for 10 minutes, a teacher loves this voice command because they don't have to have other tools. They don't have to have their phone. They don't have to go back to their desk to, have a physical small clock, etc. So even small things like that, I think it's an impact of like how much time can I save with some of these tools. And then when you come to student part of it, of course, there are a lot of different metrics you can follow, but one of the key things is like, how is it helping the student outcome?
Right, right. So let's dive a little bit more into what the policy is. So when we talk about establishing AI policies, are they being tagged on to current acceptable use policies, or are they a policy upon itself? Talk a little bit about the creation and the best practices of integrating this into what already probably is a high stack of policies.
Yeah. I think what we have seen is, of course, there are some school. I mean, I'm going to give an example of various different, the good, best, better kind of strategies. I have seen schools using it as part of their acceptable use of technology part, and that's by annually that goes out to the parents, and their parents have to accept it, etc. Then I've also seen very dedicated AI policy from a state level, from a district level. That has helped, like some of the states, there are 22 states right now, which have already created this kind of AI policy of how they think their school districts should use policy. But even with all of this, what we have seen, some of the school district come and tell us, like, we have conducted workshops. Even though we are a AI tool vendor, Merlin Mind vendor, we try to be agnostic and we say, okay, we have a checklist and we go through and we do have a workshop that we create. Okay, if this is the document you're creating, how will you fill in the blanks for all the things that I talked about, like, data privacy, legal compliance, and, security, how secure is the data being kept? What are they doing for the implementation strategy, technical? And then I've also heard that, for example, in New York Department of Education has students be part of the AI policy too, because they wanted students to, because we talked about administrators, teachers. We are not a student facing tool yet, but I do think it's super important if you have an AI tool that is student facing to have students be part of, okay, what is acceptable? Can they use this for assignment? Can they not use it for assignment? If they're using it for assignment, what teacher guidance is being provided? What school level guidance is being provided? Because sometimes what we have heard educators is like we are left on our own. We want districts to say, can they use, is it okay to use AI tools for some of these assignments? Yeah.
Right, because I mean, you could be in a situation where a district could be banning AI, right? Well, number one, good luck with that. And number two, where you're telling the students not to be using these tools, while at the same time the teacher might be using AI to create the assessment, the quiz that
Right.
they're to do the kids, right? So like, which one's right? So that needs to be clear to everybody,
Right.
not just at the administrative level, right?
Again, it's about transparency, right? Be upfront, and even from the district level, let's be super clear so that we set the right tone to say, is it okay? It's not okay. And if it is okay, then give the limits and boundaries of it. To what extent is it okay to use these AI tools for student level assignments or for assessing grade assessment?
Yeah. And maybe as we're post COVID here with some of the lessons that we learned there, is it okay as part of the policy to kind of say, this is a flexible document? This is something that might change day to day or week to week or month to month?
I think it is important to say we will revisit this document on a periodic basis and update it, because why? Because the AI landscape is evolving and changing so quickly.
Yeah.
It is going through significant advancements as we speak as well. So I think before it was all text-based chatbots. Now you have image generation. Now you have audio generation. Now you have audio podcasts like Notebook LM, which just came out from Google, has that all the ability for research and, like, providing podcasts, etc. So what is acceptable? So you
Yeah.
have to revisit at a periodic basis to make sure that it is not a stale document, that it becomes usable after some time. So it's important that it is periodically visited. And you
Yeah. I
can.
mean, when you see the announcements of Microsoft and Khan Academy baking AI tools
Mhm.
into their systems, we've jumped the shark, right? I mean, it's like, it's, again, as you said, like, it's in there. So how is the best way to use that? And does that need to be mentioned in the policies itself?
I think going back to the transparency part, right? Just set the level, set the guidelines, saying that, hey, this is going to be an annual visited document, and this is what we expect this to be updated on this by this cadence, right? I know, I think that's what is that will help everybody be in the same page, on the same page.
Yeah, yeah. Now talk a little bit about go back a little bit about the relationship you're talking about third-party vendors. I thought that was kind of an interesting comment, and I don't want to lose it. As part of the responsibility of the tech directors of what their products and the AI aspects of that, and what they're specifically doing with the data, that seems to be a real pressure point, right?
Important to say, hey, I mean, every software tool now or AI tool will throw these terms at you, like to say, okay, this is why we are using, where you're using data. I think it's important to dig a little deeper to say, okay, tell me exactly how my data is being used. Are you feeding this data back to the models is it getting trained? If yes, I just need to know, and like just make it super transparent about it.
Yeah.
Is your tool using our teacher and student data for training? Right? Or is it just the anonymized, or like, there is a lot of talk about data minimization, data anonymization, etc. And make sure that the software vendor, whoever you're working with, have the ability to talk to you about where they are using your data, how they are storing it, and how secure it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other best practices that you can talk about in terms of the assessment of your district kind of being ready to adopt AI tools?
Right. One of the things I think is there are not just the technology part I'm talking about right now, the process part of it. One thing we have seen and we have learned from the districts that do this well is also to make sure that there is a phased implementation strategy. What I mean is, like, don't roll it out to everybody at the same time in your district, because that only adds more work and more pressure for you. But some districts do this in a phased rollout of taking the AI tool and rolling it out to school by school, or like even like cohort by cohort. Other districts also make sure that they have identified their early adopters who are early tech enthusiasts within the class. They were called AI knots, like one of our school district called Valverde had this thing called AI knots. They were the early adopters, early tech enthusiasts within the district, and they were given this tool, and that helped other teacher community come and view that and learn from their teacher, fellow teacher, in a much better way. And that was a really good way to implement roll out the tool as well. And it also helped I think one of the other thing is that why the phased rollout is important is it helps you to sort out some of the issues, even within the environment, even within your, instead of rolling out for the whole school district. Right, because it allows you the time to say, okay, oh, do I have all the systems in place? Do I have all the data mechanisms in place? Do I have the right whitelisting and et cetera, all of that in place. So that's helpful. The second thing is also about training, AI training and AI literacy. It gives a chance, if when you do it in the phased rollout, for the teachers who are the early cohort adopters to say, hey, where is it lacking? What are the things I really need in order for me to succeed with this tool, succeed in my job with the tool, right? So I think teachers already have a lot going on. They are overburdened. So how can you make it easy for them? That's super important.
So it sounds to me that you're talking about as much of a bottoms up sort of integration versus a top down. So try to find, if you don't already know, more than likely there is that that teacher or that department that is already agitating about the use of it and wanting to use it, and make them like that case study, make them that pilot group,
Right.
and then from that you can kind of scale up from.
Yeah, exactly. So have a pilot group, and then you scale to a smaller, a little bit wider audience. And then when you're ready, when you know that you've gotten all the good science, good signals, then you roll out to the district wide.
And then on the training side, kind of in the same way. I mean, do those early adopters, they might not even need training. I mean, they might be training you on the use of it.
Yeah, we have
But,
seen that too. I'm sure a lot of the educators who are on the will agree. Like, teachers learn best from the other teachers too, and I think we have seen some of the best demos are given by educators too, because they are very passionate about it when it's helping them. When the tool really helps them and speaks to them. So.
and so the policy itself doesn't necessarily have to be something that is restrictive per se. I mean, but more of a prescriptive.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a great way to put it. What we do in our checklist when we talk about these workshops is we say, hey, if you haven't thought about it, these are some of the things we have seen work really well. And whatever, even just not with us, with even other vendors in your talking, ask them, will they support a phased rollout? Will they come in for training in a different approach? Are they, and what are they doing for AI literacy? What are they doing for AI training? And how easy or difficult is it for me to discover the new features or AI features, etc.? How easy is it to integrate with my existing systems? Is it interoperable with my existing systems? Is it safe? Is it secure? Is how much testing has been done, the third-party testing that has been done on your product. Because there is the whole thing about the responsible AI is also about the 6 principles on which we have developed, which is purpose-built. Has this tool been purpose-built for education? Right? That's one thing that's important. Is it safe? What are the safety metrics that you have, or what safety testings and evaluations have you done? Like, for example, on Merlin Mind, we did red team testing with a third-party vendor because we didn't want to bias the outcome or the results. We wanted a third-party independent tester to test our product and say how risk or how vulnerable it is. And then, is it reliable? Like, what kind of QA and quality assurances practices are you following? Is it transparent? And is it like fair? Like, what kind of biases does the system highlight, right? Or has it been tested for bias, etc.? So on privacy and security, as we talked about all the compliance before, FERPA, COPPA, SOC 2, etc., has it gone through all of that? So these are ask the vendors for what are your responsible AI principles? Where are those? Like, can I see it? Do you have such tenets and principles guiding your development of AI? Because that's important for you to know, right? That's
Yeah.
important for the school districts to know.
Question coming in from the audience, which is great. Thank you. And please bring in any questions that you have. This one is, do you recommend offering training to parents once you've established that your district will be using these specific acts? That's certainly, we all became, speaking as a parent, we all became teaching assistants in March of 2000 and continue to be, hopefully. Talk a little bit about that expansion of training.
I think the training, absolutely. I think to bring along the community with you, to the families and the parents with you, I think it's important. But it also depends on what kind of AI tools. Is it like, is the student going to be using a lot of tool, like AI tool? And then I think it's super important that the parents are aware and parents are known, and the training happens to the parents as well.
And then how does that look, say, on the portal, just in terms of from a parent perspective? Or, when I think about going into a school district system, and historically, in terms of internet resources, for example, or curriculum tools, you have a library of different things that you go through. Does the AI library, is that separate, or is that part of the overall notion of?
Yeah, it's almost as equivalent to, there's a lot of these AI literacy videos that are being put out by education organizations very effectively, right? Like, for example, Teach AI, code.org, and Common Sense Media. I think the way I say this is very similar to the digital media literacy that happened when internet came around, when media became, like, and student, and from middle school grade onwards, students were exposed to what is a good etiquette, how do you be safe, what are phishing scams, what are everything. I think in a similar way, and that went out to parents too. There was a lot of resources for parents as well in the Common Sense Media and other stuff. In a similar way, I think if we have a website for school and you have all the community and resources for parents, and one of the things we could do is like, what is AI literacy? How is AI being used in our school district? But other than that, what AI tools are being exposed to the students right now? Or, are is okay for the community too. I had a really good example. We don't have a student-facing tool yet, so we don't. But I had a good example from NYDOE, from a conference I attended last time. There was a kid who was able to teach her dad about AI and helped him use it in his sales efforts, right? So I think that, and equity, because there are communities, all kind of communities you're serving, it's important that we bring along the community on the use of AI.
Yeah, I mean, this certainly is a time now that even kind of expands upon what happened, say, in 2007, 2008, when we were all handed iPhones, that our students and faculty were all being handed this stuff at the same time. So the expectation or the idea as adults that we were going to be able to see what these applications are going to be, and it's the same thing, as you said, with AI, that the student are comfortable with it. This is all they've ever known. It's not like something that's being introduced to their experience, right?
So I think we definitely need that AI media literacy kind of stuff, a similar vein to the parents as well. So Just to answer back
Yeah.
that was the original question. Yeah.
Yeah. Another question coming in. Let me see here. Oh, that's a technical question. Never mind. But I will say that on the other hand, the from a parent perspective, there should be an element of reassurance as well, right? I mean, as a district's responsibility, the parents shouldn't they should be reassured that their students' data is safe. I mean, they don't need to kind of enter into that conversation of trying to figure out what's appropriate or not appropriate.
And that goes back to the acceptable use of technology policies that the parents have to sign, and it has to spell out very clearly what data is being used, what data is not being used. And, so I think that's absolutely, the parents need to be aware and this
Yeah.
baptized later on. So,
And so should be part of an overall communication strategy. I'll assume that most districts will already have something in place where a parent is signing off on an acceptable use policy, or there's a policy night at the beginning of the school year. Talk a little bit about how that's kind of integrated more into the overall kind of management and service to families.
I think one is, I mean, of course, I'm talking from being a part of Merlin Mind, which is responsible AI and policy, but I'm also a parent. I have kids in like middle school and elementary, and I'm also on the PTA board for my school. So with all this in mind, what I'm trying to say is like it's super important for parents to be aware and not be surprised. So in the school information system, at the beginning of every year, when you register, you do go through acceptable use of technology. What are the applications that are being used? What are the tools? It's important to call out if there are AI tools, you can bring the attention to the parent. That's one way to do it. The second way that the school districts and what we are working in our PTA as well is to say, hey, if it is a new tool and if it's new that's not being covered by the acceptable terms of use before, could we send an updated version? Could we also bring the attention to the parents about this new technology that we are introducing, and call out very specifically, this is how we are using AI and this is how the data is being used for your students. So those are the things that we are looking at from this angle. Yeah.
Yeah, but could raise a number of different challenges, especially when you look at some of the political environment the past few years of school districts with other elements, and also there's always been a natural, I think, general resistance and fear of anything that's new and new technologies. Any tips on how to approach this in a positive way, as opposed to because you hear policies and you're like, oh well, this is what we
Yeah.
can't do.
I think I always believe in starting from what pain point are you solving? What use case is this solving? And I think when you tell that story to teachers, to students, or to parents, it helps. What is the value prop? Why is this important for us to use this tool as a school district? And why are we using this tool? And what pain point will it solve for us as educators, as students, but also for you as a community?
Mm-hmm.
As a
Mm-hmm.
parent, right? I think that's very important. Like just throwing data, a policy for the sake of policy is not going to really, as a parent, I will not read it and I don't know. But as if you tell me the story of why this tool is being used, what does it address? I think that will help. Right. So again, technology for the sake of technology doesn't solve really much, doesn't tell me much. But if we are saying we are using this technology to solve this problem, to help us with this use case, to help us get better in these learning outcomes or whatever, then for me, that makes sense.
Yeah. Thinking about our listeners, our attendees here, are there any differences when it comes to establishing policies depending on the size of a district? Say, I mean, we have a few districts here in New Jersey where you have 700 students, and then 60 miles away we have New York City public schools. Any in your experience and Merlin Mind's experience of implementing these things that there might be some distinctions, or is there really kind of a general understanding?
I think it's better to have a general understanding first. I think you could also look at what your neighboring school districts are doing and see if we can piggyback if you're not part of a big, large school district. And then you can attack this together with another smaller district next to you or neighboring. And I've seen that happen.
Mm.
Or look for your state guidance. There are state level district policies. Look for policies from other organizations. Ask the vendors who you're talking to. Look for policies from ISTE, from COSIN, from like EdSafe AI Alliance, which we are a member of, right? Like, because that one tells you how to determine the right safe AI tools for your district. So
Yeah.
I suggest, if you're a small district and you don't want to take on the burden, then go look for these kind of resources that already exist in place.
Yeah. How about policies in terms of K-5 versus middle school versus high school? I mean, do we need to make some adjustments as students get older? Can you talk a little bit about some of the distinctions there?
Yeah, I think it is important to understand who the demographics are. Is it for K, I mean, as you said, if it is middle school and up, and especially middle school, maybe you help them use the tool or help them say, okay, how it, but in high school, we are going to see the shift from the students not doing anything, and they are going to use it. They will use it even if you tell them not to, or if you don't, they are going to use it, because that is the age where they're exploring a lot of different things. They learn from their peers, they learn from like other things that they are part of. So it's important that you have very specific policies for high school kids, especially on how they can and they cannot. And in middle school too, to introduce a concept and say, okay, write this essay with the help of AI, but critique that essay as if you are the critic, right? And whether it's done a good job or not, that gives them a great way to great interaction,
Yeah. Yeah.
as opposed to just taking it away from them. So
Right. And as you said earlier, that have them involved in the establishment of the policy itself, right?
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So
So we talked about the state of play, where we are. We talked about the past and the evolution of it, without making our audience sign any non-disclosures here. But can you talk a little bit about looking into the future? I mean, where you see this evolution going, and kind of prep them
yeah,
for if they've
I
gotten this far.
Yeah, and I'm seeing it from a holistic technology part of it, right? Like how AI, what I'm seeing in the industry, being very close to the technology side of it. What I see right now is the multimodal AI. I'm sure some of you have seen it, like the latest AI models that were released by OpenAI or even Gemini, and then the image generation, audio generation, all of that becoming more and more. I think what this means is, if you are asking a kid to write a narrative or a presentation, or like, even in your creative classes in electives in high school, and for music production, for example, are they using AI tool for the production? Are they using AI tool for the creation, composition part of it? Is that acceptable, not acceptable to you? So, but all of that is coming up right now, like multimodal part of it. And then you talk about agents and AI agents that are doing. I mean, it's another way to say, there is a AI tool that can complete your task. It doesn't matter whether it's one tool or multiple tools behind the scenes for you. It will complete the task for you. It will take the action on behalf of you. So those are things that are coming down the pipeline. What that means for education is, edtech is, AI is here to stay. It's growing, and it is to make the I think it is to make it easy for you. You have to be ready for it, and you have to make sure you are aware of some of the things. And it's a tool. It's an assistant.
Yeah. Another question coming in from the audience. Have any states set guidelines as to the percentage of curriculum that can be AI instruction or use? So talk a little bit. You mentioned state departments of education. I mean, and suggesting that districts go and look for assistance there. Can you go a little deeper?
Let me make sure I understand the question correctly. Is it saying, I mean, if the question is, has any state set AI policy guidelines? Yes, there are 22 states or more, I think, as we are coming. That was a old number, but that's increasing. But is the question about percentage of curriculum using that part?
We'll see if our audience member can make it more detailed. But I'm reading it as, kind of going to that ban versus use sort of percentage, right? I mean, it's just like, does the state of Connecticut, for instance, say you can or you cannot use AI tools, if you're going to be receiving state funding for something?
So again, as I said, there are 22 states which have already put the guidelines out, policy guidelines for AI. So which means they are all okay with the AI policy, use of AI, I think. And one other question is that I keep hearing about right now is like how you had computer literacy or you used computers and you started introducing computers at a certain point in your curriculum. Like my second grader right now is exposed to Chromebooks and he has some computer lab, etc. Would we do that? Is it going to be part, and coding became part of the curriculum too at certain point. And I think the question is, would AI become part of the curriculum at some point? And I think that is something that still work. I'm not clear on that yet. And that's something I think that question is coming up.
Right. That we may not be having this conversation about AI in 5 years, much like after the first 5 years of using the information superhighway, we don't talk about using the web, right? It just becomes baked in an expectation.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what is going on right now. Yeah. And I mean, I would encourage all the attendees to look at your state and see if they have policies, if they have guidelines already, and see what can be used off of that.
Right. So I'll assume the mind of the audience here. I'll assume a certain percentage. Well, let me ask you this. So I assume that everybody has some sort of policy in place, or from your experience dealing with districts, are there some that still need to have something?
Some that still need to have something, some that
Okay.
there are, we see spectrum. It's definitely changing. When
Yeah.
last year in December in one of the smaller webinar like this, there were 8 districts I was talking to, not only one of them had a policy or out of the 10, right?
Yeah.
But I think that number is slowly beginning to change, but there
Yeah.
are some districts which need the policy guidelines or workshop to help them.
All right. So first step suggestions for those districts once they get off the webinar today. Can you give them some action points?
And, I mean, we have a QR code right after in our presentation, and take a look at that. Like that QR code has adoption checklist for you, regardless whether you're using our tool or not. If you're interested in talking to us, request a demo, contact us. We are happy to help you in whatever way we can, etc. Also, go check out some of the other, like EdSafe, AI Alliance, which we are an industry council member of, or other things like, COSIN, ST, etc., for any of the guidelines.
Yeah.
So
And
first taking an inventory of what AI tools are there and what you have signed up for and what they are asking you from data perspective and privacy perspective, that is important.
okay, great. Well, so the audience member actually has come back. Their district has no policy. They've created a committee with 3 subcommittees, but some are not early adopters and are against AI use. It's still difficult to get staff on board. So, I mean, I guess I'm assuming our readers and listeners, if you're reading eSchool News, you probably drank the Kool-Aid, right? I mean, like you understand that, but there's still a wider pool of folks who are resistant. So again, I mean, maybe you can go back. I mean, is it to approach it from the technology perspective? Is it's you said it's approach it from the solution, right? I mean, that's your recommendation to
Exactly what problem is it solving? What problem do you want to solve? But other than that, I think one thing we are how may it's about equitable access to these tools, right? Like you don't want your school district to be left behind when the neighboring school district or the state level school districts are going and making use of these AI tools and their students are extremely comfortable with it. And you are the only one who's not using it. That's not fair for you as teachers, as educators, or your district, as well as your students or the parent community.
yeah. Yeah, so again just to keep the conversation going about how, the positive results of these, and maybe starting with the staff who may begin to understand that through the use of these tools, maybe their after hours work in terms of creating assessments,
Yeah.
or I mean grading assessments can be reduced in time, right?
Yeah, lesson planning, prep, and like what we have seen, lesson planning, prep, rubrics, and we have also seen some of the spontaneous question that comes in classroom, and teachers The teachers are very honest. They're like, we don't always have answers to these questions, but with tools like Merlin Mind and the assistant, you can ask that question to Merlin and put the burden on Merlin to see if it is giving the response from the education, and it gives you the response from the education vetted sources. But is it appropriate or inappropriate for a classroom, right? If it's an inappropriate question, it's going to come back and say, no, it's not safe to answer this question in the
Right.
classroom. Yeah.
Right.
So I think there
So,
are, yeah, go ahead.
oh, well, just in terms of, again, that, and thank you for the comments from the audience, because that's putting me in my place, that there is still a
Oh, yeah.
lot of resistance out there. What would you say are the biggest myths that are out there that can be debunked or punctured, that
You know,
are coming to our audience?
one of the myths that early days had, and I think it is to a certain extent still there, as we hear from comments too, that if there is AI tool, my job is at a jeopardy, right? I think no, this is it's a misnomer, it's a myth. I think what we keep hearing, even in the industry technology part of it, is like it's not that AI is going to replace you. It's another person who knows AI that will replace you in the future, right? That's what is being said to the future of workforce, to students as they learn. I think it is for your own benefit, even for your own productivity sake. I use it in my personal life too a lot. I think it's important that you're aware of the current advancements and happenings. And I think that's it. It is a tool, it's an assistant to help you. But teachers are irreplaceable. They cannot
Yeah.
be. So.
Don't ask me where a few of these questions came from, by the way. The AI tools are all around us, right? Well, I mean, it's, again, the toughest part of my job this afternoon is to end this conversation. We could go on because there's so many different flavors and aspects to it.
Mhm.
But let me wrap up by asking you, what are your hopes? What are your hopes as you see these developments? And you started to talk about some of the eventual technologies and the way they're evolving in terms of chatbots and all the rest of it. Give us a little bit into your crystal ball about where you see this advancing education in general. So as we have this conversation in 5 years,
I want to be clear that, one thing I want to say is that the hype of AI put it so much in a way that we felt, everybody felt like AI was going to do everything everywhere all at once. AI is not a panacea. It's not going to solve all the world problems. It's not going to solve many of our administrator, educator, or student problems either. Let's just have that right. When used effectively by a human and human in the loop and humans who can redirect into the extent, and as an AI being used as an assistant and just as a tool, can be effective, right? So I think that's what I see more and more. Will it get into the tech? Yes. We have all heard, I mean, 10 years ago, if you looked at the Gates Foundation thing about personalized learning, it was there, right? Even now,
yeah,
it's still there. Has it been solved to a great extent? No, it is still, because of the nature of education. It is not just about academic learning. That can be done, just learning the concept. It is about social emotional learning. It is how the students learn what is right, what's wrong within the school environment, in all these different aspects, and a teacher who is the center to guide those discussions. I think that is what is important. I just happened to sneak peek the chat at the last question, which came up about, like, the parents will ask, oh, if AI is there, like, why do we need teachers, etc. I mean, um, first of all, I hope no parent is asking that question, right? That's my hope. But
yeah,
if they're asking, then it is, as an educator, you have to say, and it's its district's job and the school's job to educate the parents on what is going on in school. The school is not just for coming in and learning the concepts alone. It is where the students learn how to navigate life, how to navigate social emotional learning, how to navigate concepts learning, and how do they go and ask for help to with the teacher if they don't know what they are learning or if they are falling behind. It is how do you raise hand. So the educators have a lot of other things that they do offer. AI is just a tool and an assistant.
yeah. And the policy what can actually be maybe that manifesto that brings that all together?
Exactly. And the policy or the communication memo, whatever you want to call it, for the parents. Sorry, if you have a school district and a district which has an AI policy, you're being transparent, you're being proactive. You are also taking an opportunity to educate your community about, hey, look, we have an AI policy. We have a guideline, and we are saying where it is acceptable for the teachers to use AI and not use AI, even for students to use AI and not use AI. So this is what we do believe in learning. We can use AI as a tool and an assistant for that learning experience, but it is not going to replace the holistic learning.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think that's why the policy is important.
Well, I see that our time is just about up, so I'm going to wrap up the conversation here. My brain is certainly full. The great insights and ideas, great questions that came from the audience. So, Latha, I really appreciate again your time and your insights, and again, thanks to the audience for participating as well. As a reminder to the audience, you'll get an email within the next few days that contains a link to this recording along with the slides. And again, you can use the QR code here to get more resources as well. But thanks again for participating, and have a great day.